Welcome to the Antelope Valley Chambers of Commerce first podcast of many. My name is Mark Hemstreet. I'm the CEO for the Antelope Valley Chambers of Commerce. We are the biggest, largest, best chamber in the Antelope Valley. We just recently merged with the Palmdale and the Lancaster Chamber to make one big, wonderful Chamber of Commerce. And today is our first podcast. And our first person for today is a good friend of mine. It's Brian Avery, who is one of the co-founders and owners of Bravery Brewing. He also is a board member and also on my executive team for the Antelope Valley Chambers of Commerce. So welcome, Brian. Glad to have you on our show today.
Thanks, Mark. I'm really excited to be here today.
Cool. We're going to be talking a lot about beer, which is one of my favorite subjects. But in talking about how Brian got in the business and how Bravery started, let's go back a few years ago. We'll go back to when you were in college.
Yep.
And I know you kind of did a little bit of the home brewing back in college. Let's go back to those days and tell me what inspired you to start making your own beer, and how did that lead up to opening a brewery here in the Antelope Valley?
Yeah. So I was going to the University of Riverside and just doing my thing. I was studying film studies actually at the time. I thought I wanted to be a filmmaker, which who knows, maybe one day I still will be. Just down the street from where I was living was a homebrew shop called More Beer. Really wonderful guys. Still friends with some of them today. And they would do these really cool demonstrations every Saturday. And so a couple of guys would just be outside in the parking lot brewing up a batch of IPA or, milk stout or something. And if you've never been around a home brewing process, it smells so amazing. Just these really fragrant aromas are wafting away from the kettle as you're brewing. And so it really kind of catches you when you're walking up to it. And just a bunch of really cool, unassuming dudes that knew a lot about beer. And, like any good college student, I enjoy drinking beer. And
but as a college student drinking beer, you're usually drinking the really inexpensive beer.
It's a combination. When you could splurge, I would splurge. And at that point too, just like many Americans, I was really enraptured in all the cooking shows at the time. So kind of culinary interests were already there. And making beer has so much in common with baking. And there's also a lot of chemistry to it too. Like some of that kind of, gastro, molecular gastro cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
right.
I should have had that one in my pocket. Anyways, yeah. So as I was graduating college, my parents were asking what kind of gift I would like. And I asked if they could get me a homebrew kit, and ended up moving down to Orange County. There was a really good friend of mine that had an extra room, couldn't pass that up. But there was no garage in that house. So every weekend I would make the 100-mile trip from Anaheim back to Palmdale to brew in my parents' garage. And initially the beer was not drinkable. I dumped a few batches down the drain, but fortunately I'm very stubborn and didn't let that get in the way. It's kind of interesting too, because this is about 10 years ago, give or take, which doesn't seem like that long, but YouTube and Reddit and so much of what makes the internet great today wasn't really around, or if it was, people weren't familiar with it. And so I still had to do it the good old fashioned way and buy books and read books about brewing.
You couldn't watch it on YouTube, right?
Couldn't watch it on YouTube. So, it just started as a hobby, as a honest enough hobby. And I was fortunate enough right out of college to get some jobs working on actual film and television sets. But all the while, every weekend, I would make the trip back up, which obviously made my mom happy to see her little boy coming back every weekend. But eventually, when one of my shows went on hiatus, I had the opportunity to intern at a local brewery out in Fullerton. And passions kind of flip-flopped, and I realized I think actually beer is the career and film is now the hobby.
So moving from thinking as a hobby to a career, how did you go from the hobby point to making it a career? Making beer at home in a garage is one thing, but doing it for a business is a huge jump. I've been to your place. You have a whole lot of capital put into your investment into all the machinery and the tanks and the equipment out there. But I know you didn't start with all that equipment. You started with just a couple big tanks and you went from there. So how did you transition? How did that transition go? We talk about it in our YAY program with kids on how to do financing, how to get investors. Was this something that you thought of starting a business, or was it your dad thinking, let's do something big, or what made the turn?
Yeah. Great point. So Bootleggers is the name of the brewery in Fullerton. And I was really fortunate that they themselves were young and small when I came on board. I spent about a year working there. And so they allowed me to wear every hat. So I would be helping with the brewing process and all that's entailed with that, down to, there's a lot of janitorial work that comes with brewing. Everything has to be very clean. So everything on that side of the operation, to bartending, to helping with deliveries, festivals, everything in between. And, had I worked at a much bigger or more established brewery, I would have probably had a much more finite role, and I would not have seen so much behind kind of the wizard's curtain. And once I was kind of making the decision and it wasn't right then because I was 22 years old when I was working at Bootleggers. I just knew that down the road, way, way down the road, this might be something I'm interested in. So just absorbed it all like a sponge. And then fast forward a year or two, my home brewing skills have really honed. And there's a handful of family friends that are kind of buzzing in our ears, like, you guys should really do this. You guys should go for it. And I'm 24 now at the time, still absolutely terrified by the idea of opening up something like that, especially since all these family friends that were buzzing don't have any beer expertise themselves. So it would all be coming down on my shoulders. But my dad, he actually has a business degree. So he's like, look, let's make a business plan. Let's hash out the numbers. Let's see if this is actually viable. And the very first thing we did was just get out a piece of paper and write down every single thing that you would need in a brewery, from the brew house to the mop and the mop bucket. And we itemize all those things, get an idea for the budget, just for the hardware. We began looking for a space. The space that we're currently in, which is a 5,000 square foot warehouse off 8th Street West. I remember walking in there for the first time, and it was cavernous. There was nothing in there. You could hear your voice echo off the walls. And I was like, this is far too big for what we would ever need. But yeah, no, to your earlier point, we started really, really small, which is great because we had the ability to grow significantly year by year. And the revenue coming in from the tasting room is what was building the brewery out over the last 8 years. Where now, if we were to just jump immediately to where we're at now, I would have never had the courage to do that. There's just no way. Nor do I think our business partners would have had the faith in us pulling that off as well.
Nice. So when you started that first year, how much beer did you make? It's hard. I don't want to say barrels, maybe bottles, or I don't know, gallons, or how do you guys measure it out there?
Yeah. So in the brewing industry, we always refer to everything as a brewer's barrel, which is 31 gallons. So it makes it a little tricky. Yeah, exactly. So we did, I think, about 400 to 500 barrels that first year. And a barrel is 2 full-size kegs.
Okay.
So we did maybe 800 to 900 kegs, which sounds like a lot if you're thinking of throwing a party, but running a tasting room that's open to the public, that's not much beer at all. And very early on we have great employee retention, which I'm very proud of too at Bravery. So we do still have some of our day one employees there. And every once in a while they'll joke about how there were times where we would have 2 beers on tap, and now we'll have up to 30 beers on tap at any given time. So yeah, we definitely underestimated the demand that the Antelope Valley had for craft beer. But that was a little by design. We knew that we would rather err on the side of not having enough beer so that it's always super fresh versus having too much beer and trying to dump it or try to schlep around expired beer.
Right. So I love hearing that you guys, first thing you guys did was a business plan. I mean, that's something that we encourage all businesses out there to do. If you're thinking about starting a business, do a business plan first. I mean, that's your roadmap to success. And without it, well, there goes your success. So we always encourage that. So you started getting that. You did a business plan. You figured out what you needed. Went out and got some investors. I take it, and started up. I mean, that's pretty cool. Were you pretty scared about starting up there?
I was a little scared, but I think the excitement of it all outweighed any of the negative kind of feelings. And one other thing too, about the business plan is even if you're just going into business by yourself and you're the outright owner, the CEO of your own company, obviously there's still a great purpose for a business plan, but the business plan is even more important when you have multiple partners, because not only are you making sure that everyone's on the same page, because a business has many, many moving parts, and it's easy to assume that you're on the same page with your partner when you're actually not. But then also it's a roadmap that you can kind of use, or a compass that you can use to remind yourself moving forward what your initial goals were and what the purpose of the business actually is. Because we did start with a handful of partners that we no longer have, and that was largely due to the fact that, hey, this was the initial plan, and this is the direction that we want for this business, and what you guys are saying is veering off that path. And so it was mostly polite, but we were able to buy out some of our partners in the first year, which looking back now is a great thing because we control that much more of our company.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's good and bad of partnerships.
Yeah.
I've been in a few myself, and there's always that give and take there, and you want to go in one direction, they want to go in a different direction. And so it's when you can buy them out, and they can buy them out reasonably, and you keep expanding, your equity just keeps going up, which is wonderful. So I mean, so you've been open for 10 years or 10? What are we on
about
now?
8.5.
8.5 years. Okay. So, 8.5 years. I know prior to March of 2020, when we could actually go in your brew house to sample your beers, business has year over year. Well, you're just about doubling the first 7-8 years, I think, weren't you, in your volume? Now you're not just a tasting room. So let's talk about going from a tasting room to going to as a wholesaler and distributor.
Yeah. So when we first started, there were much fewer concerns that we had, because it was just make fun, interesting beer that I thought was delicious, and people are going to buy it. Maybe they were buying it because it was new and unique, or maybe they were buying it because it was delicious. But there were far fewer concerns in the early days. But as we started growing and we were getting our draft beer into big places like BJ's and Yard House, the kiss of death is if you promise them product and then you can't deliver the product. It takes a long time to get into some of these establishments. The more corporate they are, the more red tape there is. So it'll take up to a year to get in there, but it just takes one day of failing to deliver to forever no longer be allowed in there. So that's a whole different animal. That makes things a bit trickier logistically, especially since we do make so many different beers, and beers have a relatively short shelf life, especially hoppy beers like pale ales and IPAs. So those have a 90-day shelf life. And so you're juggling trying to make sure you have enough while not making too much and making sure that it's fresh, while also still trying to grow. But if you grow too quickly, then you're going to run out of beer. And even after 8+ years of doing this, we are still revising and learning and becoming better at it. And I don't think, even if we're open for 100 years, that we would ever stop learning, revising, growing. So that's, I don't want to say it's a headache, because there aren't really any headaches. It's just one of the challenges that is kind of unique with any company really that's making a product that has a short shelf life.
So now, I mean, I know you guys sell wholesale. I mean, you're in Target, you're in other retail establishments, you're in a lot of restaurants out. You're a lot of local restaurants out here in town. Do you? So I mean, some breweries use a distributor to distribute the. They make the beer. You have a company comes with their own trucks and they go out across the nation or the state or locally to distribute. Are you guys distributing it yourself or do you use an outside company?
We currently self-distribute, and I imagine for the foreseeable future, we will continue to do that. We have used some distributors in the past, and it's a double-edged sword, just like most things. They do a lot of the legwork for you. A lot of the complications that do come with distribution is, trying to collect payment. And that's never fun to go ask people for money, regardless if they owe it to you or not. So some of those headaches go away, but you are then typically giving 30% cut to the distributor. And if you have your business plan and you understand your numbers, it's very easy to get the truck, get a delivery driver, all the things required to deliver the beer yourself while still coming in under that 30% cut. Plus, then you have a much more direct relationship with all of your clients, and we're able to offer much better customer service for our clients. The average distributor is going to only make deliveries once, maybe twice a week. And we try to keep to a schedule like that to manage our costs. But, if it's Friday and bar XYZ is out of beer, they thought they had enough to get through the big, football weekend, we're able to zip the beer over there and make sure they have enough IPA to get through the weekend, which they obviously appreciate.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the key points. I know, you go into a restaurant that has your favorite beer and it says it's not on tap today. It's like, what? Come on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I know running a bar, we ran the same thing, and a lot of the bigger distributorships, Friday afternoon at 5:00, they're closed.
Yeah. No one's
and then, I mean, sometimes you could catch the salesperson on his cell phone and say, hey, I need a keg of this. And they would find it somewhere. A lot of times they pull it from another restaurant that's had a little slower weekend and they juggle their back and forth to make it happen for you if you're a big account. But no, if you're running it yourself and they have your number, they're going to call you and you're going to take care of it. I think that's really cool. So nice. I mean, at this level, you can still do that.
Absolutely.
At some point it's going to get too, if you let it go, continue to grow, you may have to go out and outsource it out there, but that's still something to do there for you. Mm-hmm. So you mean 8.5 years, so you're well established now. You're on the road. Thinking back, what's one thing you would have changed, if anything?
Yeah, thinking back, definitely starting slightly bigger, because I think a lot of time and energy was spent in just overcoming the hurdles of our small size. And then probably too, just thinking a bit more about branding. I'm fairly happy with our branding now, and that's still continuing to evolve. But having a more concise idea of kind of just like brand vision for, 10 years out, which again, when we got this thing off the ground, I was 24, 25 years old. I was just excited to be able to make beer and sell beer. I didn't care about anything else. And like most really small breweries, when you start off, all of the beer is just draft. You're not putting anything in bottles. You're definitely not putting things in cans. You maybe have a t-shirt that you're selling that's just your logo on it. But you're not thinking about down the road, all these brands that are going to become iconic for your company. And that took a few years for us to kind of evolve into, because the very first year we didn't sell a single bottle of beer, because that's equipment and it's expensive. But once we had enough money, then we bought our first bottling line, and then it's like, okay, I can't just sell a blank bottle. I have to put a label on there. How are we going to do that? And, I mean, that's also part of the fun too, and kind of the visually creative side of me. I mean, again, the film studies major, that's a great outlet to kind of express myself artistically. Yeah, I think talking back to 25-year-old Brian, it would just be, hey, this is going to work out and it's going to be successful. So think about what you want the company to look like 10 years from now, and don't just be focused on the excitement of being able to turn the lights on for the first time.
Right. And you talk about branding. I mean, so Bravery has a kind of a unique brand, I think. I'll let you go into it, but we'll just kind of just touch on the name Bravery and where that comes from, and the wall you have inside the place. Just tell me a little about your branding and what kind of sets you apart from most other breweries.
Yeah.
Besides great beer.
So, when I was working on my first film set, you are amongst a crew of 80 or 90 people, and Brian is a painfully common name. So I'm at the bottom of the totem pole as the little kid on set, and my walkie-talkie, that is the most valuable tool for any production assistant, has Brian Avery on there. And so it would get confusing when people were calling for a different Brian or even a Ryan. So then finally one of the crew comes up to me and he takes the label off my walkie and rips it up a little bit, puts it back on. And so the BR from Brian goes into the AVERY for Avery. And he's like, your new walkie handle is Bravery.
Nice.
And it's like, oh, okay. So then that just kind of stuck. And then when I went on to my next production, it's like, oh, my walkie handle's Bravery. And when we partnered with the film actor and Marine Arlie Ermy, we still hadn't solidified what our name was going to be for the company. And we didn't want to do something generic, like Lancaster Brewing Company or something like that, especially since there's Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So I kind of mustered up the courage and I was like, well, what about Bravery? And there was kind of that, painful pause.
Always.
Yeah. But Lee loved it. And it was like, oh, it's great. Cause it's, showing my involvement in the company. These beers have my name on them, but then also, the partial veteran ownership of Bravery, the valley that we're in, aerospace, Edwards Air Force Base. It just really made a lot of sense. And so from day one, there's always been this kind of duality to it all, where the name means two things. And we're also trying to convey multiple things with our company, where we didn't want it to just be another, Vets Hall. Mm-hmm. While obviously when you do walk in there now, there is so much memorabilia and the wall of Bravery that I'll touch on in a second. But again, that just all organically happened. From day one, we didn't wheel in all of the memorabilia to tack on the wall. That was customers coming in and, hey, can I donate this photo of my grandpa that served in World War II and, put it up next to the American flag? And absolutely. And, our electrician, he's a metal worker on the side, and he made these really awesome aircrafts that we have hanging from the ceiling, an SR-71 and a B-17 bomber. And so with like the logo, it's a little kitschy. The umlauts over the A harken back to my initial experiences with delicious beer, which was in Switzerland. The drinking age is a little younger over there.
That helps.
So, 16-year-old Brian was drinking delicious, Swiss and German lagers. Mm-hmm. And so there's always been a respect there for beer from day one. And so the umlaut over the A in our logo makes a long A, and, in the German language. And so that's just kind of a hearkening back to our history and our kind of like long-term respect for beer, while also trying to keep things fun and airy, because then also simultaneously our brand is also about respecting service members and just, a love for the amazing country that we're in.
That's cool. I love it. I mean, it's a great tasting room. The memorabilia is really cool. The pictures on the wall are cool. You're looking at close to probably 100 years of servicemen up there, all around a big flag, which is really kind of pretty iconic. And the metal airplanes and the bomb lights that you have coming out of the ceiling, those are pretty cool. And of course, there's all that great beer to sample too. I mean, I come in there and get my growler every couple of weeks, and I'm good for a weekend on that, and it's great. So, what's next?
Well, 2020 has been a very interesting ride.
Yes, yes.
And so, people would always ask us, when are you going to put in a kitchen? When are you going to put in a kitchen? And we know how hard running a kitchen is, and all the extra scrutiny that comes with that, with the health department and whatnot. So until COVID kind of just flipped everything on its head and, really made us reevaluate everything, because we got to a point where you can't ration or budget when you don't know what the timeline is.
Right.
So with no end in sight earlier this year, we started making the casual thoughts about opening up a kitchen inside of the building, because that would then shift us into being classified as a restaurant, which would give us an earlier opening date. So yeah, a few months ago we made the decision, let's go with a pizza kitchen. Again, I've been very passionate about food for a very long time. That's kind of what got me into beer in the first place. And I just started workshopping recipes at home, and 48-hour fermented pizza dough and handmade sauce, and just trying to get the best cheese and toppings I could find. And, I've been making liquid bread for 8+ years now. It's like, how hard can it be to make some actual bread? So, no, we're excited. We're hoping to have it open possibly as early as December of 2020. And, that's gonna allow us to do some other cool things too, because our license dictates that if we have a bona fide kitchen, we can then sell wine and cider along with our beer.
Okay.
And so my wife, Kara, she's a wine sommelier, and she's very active with the Antelope Valley Wine Growers Association. Actually helped them put on their first harvest festival last year, which unfortunately this one had to be canceled. So we're going to be showcasing our wonderful local AV wineries. There's a local cidery out of Agua Dulce that we're going to have on tap as well, and delicious pizza. And then we're also putting together these kind of like curated charcuterie boxes that are going to showcase some of our favorite cheeses and meats and preserves. So it's exciting. It's been a stressful year, just like it has been for most people. But it has really kind of challenged us to rethink everything about this company, which after 8 years, it's easy to kind of get a little lazy and rest on your laurels sometimes. But it's been very invigorating to kind of have everything be threatened to be taken away from you and have to figure out how you're going to keep it, and not just keep it, but make it better.
Yeah, it's you got flipped on your side when COVID hit and they shut you down, and we're still, drinking beer outside when the temperature drops in November and we see snow on our mountains, and then you want to give me a cold beer, makes it a little bit tougher. But I think, you can't just go online and sell like some people can. You definitely you got to go there to pick up the beer. Mm-hmm. And although you do offer deliveries, right?
Correct.
So you can get beer delivered to your house, which is pretty nice. But it's just tough. I think we're working hard. The chamber's been working hard to try to get you guys back open again, and we're working hard to get you back open inside your tasting room to get people back in there. Like you said, you have a huge warehouse tasting room that has plenty of air circulation through that place. So I don't see the problem if people are just careful and considerate. I think we're on the right trail there. Anything else you want to add? Something we don't know about you, or something we don't know about the brewing industry?
I mean, nothing off the top of my head. I mean, it's always fun to talk about beer, and I mean, really any industry that someone's gone way down the rabbit hole on, you kind of forget what is common knowledge or what's kind of more professional trade secrets. But no, it has reminded me that all this kind of started out of a pivot. I thought I wanted to be a filmmaker. I had opportunities present themselves to me. And so just walked through those doors of opportunity, a little scared, but more excited. And I feel like I'm getting those opportunities again to walk through doors of uncertainty. Again, with a little bit of fear, but more excitement than fear. And yeah, I can't wait for what the next 8 years are going to bring, not just for our brewery, but the community at large. And really excited to just continue to be more involved with the chamber and focus on relationships between other small business owners here in our community, and just share our various passions for our various crafts with each other.
Nice. So today my guest is Brian Avery from Bravery Brewing, and you are located.
We are on 8th Street West in Lancaster, just down the street from the new DMV building.
Great. So 8th Street West in Lancaster, and that's just about half a block south of Avenue L. So if they just take Avenue L to 8th Street, go south, and it's on the west side of the street. And you can't a whole bunch of cars there, so you normally can't miss it. And right now there's a whole bunch of tables in this parking lot, so you can't miss that either. But hopefully we'll get you back inside, and that's the goal. And I want to say thank you for being on our show today and being on the podcast. It's great listening to you. As soon as temperature gets a little bit warmer, I'll be right back over there again, I'm sure. And thank you all for listening to today's podcast. My name is Mark Hemstreet. I'm the CEO for the Antelope Valley Chambers of Commerce. And stay tuned and watch for our other podcasts coming soon. Thank you.